Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because I have somebody on the show today who is going to give us the opportunity to get a little bit greater clarity around what is company culture and how it impacts both the internal human experience and the external human experience. Colin D Ellis was born and raised in Liverpool, UK. He's the eldest of 3 boys. His dad went out to work every day while mom managed the household. Growing up, he wasn't academically gifted, but flourished in a team environment. So having flunked his high school education, he got a job as soon as he could. He loved working. He loved interacting with people, but lacked having the discipline to get the things done and gain a financial reward from that. He started his working career working as a teller for a bank, and he learned how to excel at customer service and to be a good teammate. He also learned how to balance a till, which wasn't easy for an extrovert. From there, he moved into Liverpool City and to sell advertising space for a newspaper. He did this for 3 years before being recognized as someone who could build teams to deliver projects to address the organization's vulnerability for the year 2000 computer bug. This changed everything for Colin. He loved project management and loved to build teams that people wanted to be part of. In a little over 5 years, he climbed the ranks to set up his first project department for the newspaper. Shortly after, he left to head up a project department for a retail company who was transforming their culture. His family then emigrated to New Zealand, where he spent 6 years changing project delivery cultures in government departments before moving to Australia. In 2015, he decided to quit his job and self-published his first book and has written 3 more since. In his latest book, Culture Fix: How to Create a Great Place to Work, Colin unravels the complexity of undertaking organizational culture change. The legacy he's most proud to leave behind are 2 emotionally intelligent children who know how to treat people with kindness and possess common sense approaches to doing things well and to make people laugh. Colin currently lives in Melbourne, Australia with his wife Julia and 2 children, Ted and Cicely, although he spends most of his time in the air or hotels. Colin Ellis, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I totally am, Jim, and that was the world's longest bio. Thanks. That's our 30 minutes done, right? Right there.
I'll tell you, but here's the thing, Colin, and we'll talk about this in a moment. Is I uniquely do a longer bio that's a little bit more personal, so we can create the human connections that are so important. Because if people really don't know where you're coming from, it's really hard in order for us to be able to really see things in ourselves that we need to change and adjust, and really affects the whole culture piece. So, if we're reserving and holding those things back, how can we really connect? And so when we start talking about culture fix, I think it's most important for us to really ask the question, how do you define culture?
Yeah, for me, culture is the sum of everyone's attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, traditions, and skills, Jim. And I think we forget that cultures are made up of everybody. And one of the things that I loved about the bio is that it kind of talked to some of my vulnerabilities. The fact that I wasn't very good at balancing a till in a bank, but I love talking to people. And I think often, great workplace cultures are made up of those little vulnerabilities, those little doorways that we give in to open ourselves up a little bit. Also, great workplace cultures are when we're able to acknowledge that we're not the smartest person in the room, but they really are the sum of every single person within a team and how they work together.
Most definitely. And for you put together a really nice framework, and you talk about input models. And then you talk about the output models. And so that those input models are those important pillars on being able to create a culture that every single organization really has the opportunity to impact and affect and measure, but oftentimes fail to do so. So if you could walk through those input models, that input model of those 6 pillars.
Yeah, sure. And I think, Jim, organizations are good at either talking about the inputs or the outputs. And I'll talk about the inputs shortly. They're good at talking about one or the two, but they very rarely connect the two together and say, oh, well, if we do all of this stuff really well, then we get that. Usually they say, we've got this, or we need to do that. And so, for Culture Fix the book, and as you mentioned, I was a permanent employee of other people's cultures for 30 years. So I've got a fair bit of skin in the game. The things that I saw, and when I researched the kind of great cultures around the world, is there were fundamentally 6 pillars in terms of input into culture. And so the first pillar is the personality and communication of its people, because if you don't take the time to get to know each other, then you're never going to be able to create anything worthwhile. Then at the heart of every great culture is a vision, an aspirational statement of the future, and a set of core values. And these provide the emotional compass for people. And then there's agreement on the final 3 pillars are around behavior, how we're going to behave as human beings towards each other. Collaboration, how we're going to work together to achieve whatever it is we've set out to. And innovation, how we're going to make time for new thinking. And all of those inputs apply to any kind of team in any country, wherever you are in the world. It doesn't matter whether you're the Cleveland Indians. It doesn't matter whether you're working in a hospital. It doesn't matter whether you're kind of in government in UK. They apply everywhere.
When you start talking about those 6, though, I start thinking there is some potential cultural variances. So when you start even thinking about emotional intelligence, I myself am certified by MHS in emotional intelligence. And one of the things that they found in their analysis of emotional intelligence is that while across the globe there are some similarities, there are a few slight cultural differences. When we start talking about loyalties and hierarchies and things like that, it can affect some of this. So when you start looking, at these 6 inputs, what do you see does get potentially affected, when you start looking culturally?
Yeah, and that's true, of course, is that, Erin Mayer found in her book, The Culture Map, you kind of got an egalitarian approach and a hierarchical approach to culture. And really that's part of that personality and communication, is really fundamentally understanding where everybody's from, what kind of personality they have, but also the societal cultural context as well. Being, I'm originally from the UK. We're very detailed in our thinking. We don't really talk about emotion much. If we want to talk about emotion, we generally talk about the weather. Oh, it's a nice day outside, and everyone's, oh, Colin's in a good mood. Whereas here in Australia, it's much more social. Kind of everything's done over a barbecue. So those are those societal contexts that we need to make sure that we fundamentally understand before we start to create this thing called culture, because what you want to do is to create something that's inclusive of everybody, and it doesn't hold certain cultures on the exterior.
Okay, and as you're saying that, I start thinking about it, because this is one of the things that has come, quite open in a lot of different contexts, is that if we're talking about a multinational organization, while they could essentially set a particular tone, and have a mission and vision, ultimately culture is local. And it has to be continually nurtured and focused in on locally for it to impact the global organization. Is that correct?
Absolutely right. And we forget this, Jim, and I saw this at some of the organizations that I used to work at. The senior management team would go on an offsite somewhere really swanky. They'd decide what the culture was. They would come back and they would tell you top down, this is what the culture is. And actually, for me and my team, we were sat there going, that's not really our culture at all. But we would do that high EQ thing of taking what they come back with and say, okay, how do we apply that? But to get great organizational culture, what you need is great subcultures. So one of the case studies I used in the book, I looked at an NFL team. And if you've got a, great attacking unit, you've got a great defensive unit, you've got a great kicking unit, your quarterbacks are doing their things. All of those need to be really effective and efficient subcultures within your team. They all need to know their job, but they all need to create great culture themselves so that you get this overall great team culture that just knows how to work. Too often what I used to see, Jim, particularly in government, is one area would do one thing, another area would do another thing, and another area do something different. So you get these communication mishaps. And we call these silos, and silos can be really good things, providing everyone's doing something in a similar way. But you're absolutely right to say that, you can't have a great organization culture without having great subcultures.
Well, even when you're starting to talk about that, I draw myself back into the input models, right? And I start looking at personality and communication, vision, values, behavior, collaboration and innovation. And if I start thinking about the transformation process, there are certain things that we can actually use as ways to help carry us forward. So in other words, if I have this one, and I'm doing pretty well at it, and I strengthen that one, it's easier for some of these other pillars to fall in place. Is there one of these or two of these that kind of stand out to say, hey, okay, this is your core foundation. Hit these and then work on the others.
Yeah, completely, Jim. And again, a lot of this was based on my own experience. I found that if on the first week of my new job, I spent time building relationships and getting to know people, that was foundation number one. Then as a team, we needed an aspirational vision statement, something that would really excite us, not some long-winded statement that really meant nothing. And then having a set of core values, things that we all held to be true. When you've got those three things, what you've created is a solid foundation to agree how you'll behave, work together, and introduce new ideas or innovate. Without those three, what you end up doing is being kind of listless. As a culture, you kind of lurch from one state to another. And this is where, from an output perspective, you go through kind of all of the quadrants, which we'll talk about in a second, very, very quickly, because you just don't have a stable base to work from. So I think, getting to know each other, having a strong vision statement and a set of core values really provides the foundation for everything else, really.
Okay. All right. So that's very helpful. And then also when I look at the model and you start talking about those first three, which is what you were talking about being some of those core foundational pillars, and then transitioning into the behavior, collaboration, and innovation, is that this is one of the areas that is of most constraint for organizations, is that they may be able to do a lot of this, high level thinking stuff and put together, a nice mission statement and all that stuff. But when you flip into execution and start hitting into the whole behavior component, that's where they oftentimes fall flat on their face. So how can they create a much better bridge to transition?
Yeah, it's advice I was giving to an organization in the UK recently who said that they'd got a lot of the stuff. Someone had read the book. They got a lot of the stuff in place. How do we start holding people to account? And I said, you literally have to do a reset. I think what most organizations fear is this concept of taking people out. They talk about culture being the most important thing, but what they don't want to do is take people out of work and prove that it's the most important thing. I think once you agree a set of core behaviors, what you've got is something to hold people to. If you don't have that, then what people do is end up making excuses for behavior. And we've seen it for decades now, Jim, particularly with behavior. It's the one thing that holds cultures back is either we don't challenge poor behavior, we excuse it, and I often say that you're only as good as the behavior that you walk past. But, it really demands, if culture truly is the most important thing, it really demands that you start to performance manage individuals, which will mean doing the thing that we often fear most, which is going through a process of kind of performance management with HR that often they don't want to go through it either. Because that then sends the message that actually we're deadly serious about this culture thing. And we're not going to allow anybody to behave in a way that gets in the way of what we're trying to achieve.
Well, and you mentioned that in the book, and you mentioned a couple things that are really key points in that. And that was one of them, is that managers, do not, actually set the expectation for one, and then therefore measure to that expectation, which could potentially include coaching up or coaching out. Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I talk about this in the book, and, I talk about it a lot, is often I feel for managers because, for the last kind of, millennia, I suppose, we've been promoting people based on length of tenure rather than their ability to really inspire and motivate people, which is what management and leadership is all about. Leadership really is managers who make the choice to become a positive difference in people's lives. They choose to put themselves in service of others. But a big part of that is learning how to set expectation and then how to hold people to that. And often we don't teach people how to do that. We kind of learn from the people around us, and certainly I learned from the people around us. I was very fortunate, probably in my 30 years of career, to have maybe 6 people. And, you might think, oh, that's not very many, one every 5 years. But those 6 people had such an impact in my life, that they taught me kind of from a distance and coached me how to set expectation, but also then how to have those courageous conversations that I didn't necessarily want to have in a highly emotionally intelligent way. So without emotion, and, keeping people honest to the promises that they'd made, and to make sure that they contributed to the organization's success.
So when you start looking at, these 6, pillars in the input model, obviously there's some things that are outside of that, like this leadership strength component and element that are required in order, for us to make impact in these particular areas. So that's a key one. What are one of the other keys that we need to pay attention to?
Well, I think self-awareness is critically important, Jim. You have to fundamentally understand yourself. What's your own motivation? What are you trying to achieve? I think often people, when they do this kind of exercise, they focus on me and mine. What do I want to achieve for me, without considering all of the people around them? And essentially, if you kind of put the emphasis on helping others and elevating others, so really developing those parts of yourself, then as a manager, you'll get the payback from that, because as a team, you evolve and grow. But if you're not aware of your own strengths, you're not aware of your own opportunities for improvement, then really you're only ever going to achieve half of what you're capable of, because you're not really pushing yourself to that next level. And looking at the things that and often, before we came on, we were having a quick chat. It's one of those sacrifices that you're going to make in order to, become the person that you want to be. I think too many people are constrained by their own mindsets, rather than grabbing this thing called ambition by the scruff of the neck, developing their own purpose and throwing everything behind it.
Most definitely. I mean, I think to me that's been a constant struggle all my life, and I don't know if it's ever going to change, because I was even having this discussion earlier. I said, I would rather take 1 step forward and 2 steps back, because at least I'm moving. It's when I'm standing still that's a problem. And even when I start looking at people that I like to collaborate with, I don't like people who just stand. I mean, it's like, hey, if we fail, we fail. I mean, at least that's a learning opportunity. But when I start looking at these input models and talking about these factors and these key points, ultimately we have to get to those output models. And I think this is probably a good time for us to talk about those.
Yeah, the output models, there are really 2 things. When you look at great organizational cultures, they have 2 things. They have highly emotionally intelligent people, and who care about each other, who care about the team that they're working in, who care about what the organization is trying to achieve. We call that engagement these days. So they're high in emotional intelligence, they have high engagement. When you have low engagement and low emotionally intelligent staff, you have a stagnant culture. And in these cultures, it's quiet. There's no consequence. No one's holding you to anything. No one's setting any expectation. Nobody really cares. People do 9 to 5. There's lots of change aversion. People actively avoid things that make them feel uncomfortable. And so nothing really happens in those kind of stagnant cultures. And just as bad, though, Jim, are pleasant cultures where, even though we're highly emotionally intelligent, engagement is still low. So there's a human factor to that. So that's a good thing. But there's just no challenge. We routinely miss deadlines. Everything is overly consultative. Everybody goes to every meeting. There's document after document and process after process to try and make things happen, but really people don't have the discipline. Then when you get to that high engagement but low emotional intelligence, you get what we call combatant cultures. Everything here is a fight. Everything here is a battle. Lots of anxiety, lots of stress, lots and lots of poor behavior. So we generally call these cultures toxic. And so, I talked about at the start, we'll talk about the output model. So you'll see this in the news all of the time when things are broken and there's appalling behavior in the workplace. But what you obviously want to be as a culture is we're highly engaged employees who are high in emotional intelligence. And these cultures are vibrant. You have an agreed vision, agreed behaviors. Everybody's pushed. Everyone's trying to be 5% better. There's celebration, there's laughter. There's a real desire to do things and succeed, but in the right way. You carry no passengers, and this is where you get the results in these vibrant cultures.
And so, but when I look at this, talking about these input models and to get to the output models, I often, and you and I even we were talking about that off mic discussion. We started talking about timelines. This stuff does not happen quickly. I mean, when we start talking about transformation timelines, what often do you see?
Yeah, it doesn't happen quickly. That's why most organizations don't have the stomach for it, Jim. What they want to do is quick fix approaches. They want to go open plan, I mentioned. They want to go on a field trip and copy what everybody else does. They want to bring in consultants to tell them what they already know. They want to do a rebranding exercise. They want to implement the latest system. Agile is the latest silver bullet that we're implementing. Really, only with deliberate effort can you ever change the culture. And it takes between 9 to 18 months. And in that time, what you've got to do is stay true to what you've all agreed. So, I talk about the fact that senior managers have to role model what they're looking for, and everybody else has to take responsibility for it. And you get this meeting in the middle of kind of like-minded souls who want to see the organization achieve. You also have to challenge those people who don't want to be a part of it. And some of them don't want to be a part of it because it's not what they want to do. That's cool. You can go and get other jobs. Other people have to be performance managed out of the business. And again, that sends the message, sets the tone. And you have to do something different every month. So, for some organizations, I do year-long programs that I help them with. So it's me coming back every month. For other organizations, I'll just do a quick 2-day definition, but then help them map out what that might look like so that you're getting new thinking, new ideas every single month, and you're holding each other accountable. Because once you've created this thing called the vibrant culture, so once you get all those inputs right and the output is a vibrant culture, staying there is the biggest challenge, which is why you don't get any sports teams that dominate for 15, 20, 25 years. In the UK and in soccer there, they had Manchester United who really dominated for 20 years. Because culturally, they got it absolutely right, and they managed out certain players who were past their prime, and they brought some new ones in, and they brought younger players in. There's lots of sports metaphors out there, but you look at the big organizations that achieve year after year after year, it's because they pay particular attention to their culture, and they never stop growing and learning.
Well, I think that's it. I mean, it's the, maintenance mode. That's the continuous mode, right? Okay. So you and I had talked about this, and you even mentioned it a moment ago, but all of this requires us to, definitely, have the energy and the inspiration and the stick-to-itiveness and all that. And one of the things that we look at on the show are quotes to kind of help us do that. Is there a quote or two that you like that you can share?
It's funny, Jim. We were talking before, like the kind of world of inspirational quotes has really taken off, and often I'm inspired by real life action. There's a Winston Churchill quote that I love, which is never, ever, ever, ever give up, which I do love that one. That provides me with a little bit of daily motivation, when I come across those little things that we all get stuck on. So I love that concept of never giving up. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I actually just quoted that one to my father earlier today, who's dealing with something that he has to change because of, changes in his eyesight. I said, never give up, Dad. He goes, I said, be a role model for your grandkids. He goes, oh, okay.
Fabulous.
Okay. So, but hey, there are times when we fall. You had that transition. You talked about flunking out in your high school education. All those things are learning opportunities, and we talk about getting over the hump on the show. And I know that you have some good insights that you can actually share for us by sharing your story. Can you tell us about a time when you got over the hump?
Yeah, not too long ago, actually, Jim. I quit my job in 2014. I was determined. I never wanted to work for myself. I thought I kind of, had something that people would want to buy. I didn't really know anything about starting a business. And I saved up enough money for us to kind of live comfortably in a house for 3 months. I got nothing. And so we came very close. I was 40. So 2015, early 2015, I was 45. We had 2 young kids. We came very close to having to move back to the UK to live with our parents. we really gambled everything. My mum had just been diagnosed with a brain tumor as well, Jim. So we had all of the stress. I lost confidence in myself. I didn't really have much belief in what I was trying to do, but, never ever give up. I found a way to really kind of motivate myself. I thought that I had a good idea, and I'm not the finished article. I'm only really kind of 3 full years into what I'm trying to achieve here. And it's been pretty successful so far. But that was really tough. And because I had the emotion to deal with and the kind of fact that we just had no money, but we got through it.
Well, I would dare to say, and that listening to you talk about that, there was some collaborative aspects and all of that, between you and your wife. So when you start, looking at an organization, when you started looking at that example in that situation, how important is team member support in your success?
Oh, it's crucial. And what you need, we talk about leadership a lot, Jim. We don't really talk about followership. And I think what we need is good followership. And that means that anyone can lead at any time, and that we as a team all agree that whatever the leader thinks is the right thing to do, then we'll follow and we'll support. It's something that I used to instill in my teams, and we didn't used to call it followership. We used to call it being a good teammate. We had this concept of being a good teammate. So every, kind of big department I led, we talked about what it meant to be a good teammate. I often say with the work that I do, and I do fly around the world a lot, which is great. And I love traveling to different parts of the world, but I couldn't do what I do if I didn't have the support back home to be able to do that, Jim. So, we talk a lot. We make sure that we're well planned, much like any great culture. There's a lot of good planning goes into that. We make sure that different members of the team understand what's happening and when. We set expectation really when, we kind of make sure that our behaviors are in check. So kind of a lot of the family stuff that we do here is learned from some of the great teams that I've been part of. And me and my wife, strive to create the kind of environment where everyone can succeed regardless of what we're doing.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing that, because for me, I was even having this discussion with somebody earlier today. We oftentimes don't have that conversation, and we hit this a moment ago. Don't have that conversation with those people who are trying to drag everybody else down and say, hey, that's not okay. Oftentimes we concede, to those people, and then we bring those that have the joy, and we pull it out of them in order to make this big middle. And that's not, an inclusion thing that unfortunately is going to have some long-term success with it. So when I start looking at all that you've done, made the transition, writing the books, doing the speaking, doing the culture change work and all of that, when I start, thinking about goals, can you share one of your goals with me?
Yeah, one of my goals is to be seen as someone who provided a positive contribution to the world, Jim. That's and it feels so glib saying that, because I never thought I'd be that guy. But, when I decided to start my business, and it was off the back of, I went to a conference that I'd paid for as a permanent employee that really didn't give me anything. And I felt like it was just a bunch of people trying to sell me something. And what I wanted to do was almost to be the antithesis of that. I remember speaking to one early in my career, and they were like, oh, if you're going to write a book, don't write how to do anything in there. That's what you want people to buy. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I want to create something. I want to be the kind of individual that, sure, I've got a business to grow and water, but I want to be kind. I want to be empathetic. I want to give away knowledge. I want to give things back to a community that I would have been gladly part of. So, one of my goals, I ask myself every time we post something on LinkedIn, every time we do something like this, record videos, I'm conscious of kind of the old me and would the old me say, is this providing a positive contribution to the world? Because, that's what I want to be known as.
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best.
Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement, along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about an Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better.
All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the
Hump Day Hoedown.
Okay, Colin, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Colin D Ellis, are you ready to hoe down?
I'm ready.
All right. So what is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
The thing that's holding me back is not admitting to myself that I need to shut up every now and again and listen more.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
That you're not the smartest person in the room, and you should take on board other people's ideas and learn from them.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
My never-ending energy. I look after my mind. I look after my body. I get to bed early so that I can do the best that I can throughout the day.
And what is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
Self-awareness. So that ability to be able to look at myself and say, here's something that I'm good at. I should coach people. Here's one thing that I need to learn.
And what would be one book that you'd recommend to our Legion? It could be from any genre. Of course, we're going to put a link to Culture Fix on your show notes page as well.
On the Road by Jack Kerouac, because it really opens up your mind to what's possible in your life.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Colin D Ellis. Okay, Colin, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you can take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take it all. You can only take one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
A piece of knowledge that I would take back is how to communicate a message to different personalities, Jim. Not something that I was ever taught, but something that I learned how to do, which has held me in great stead for the last 20 years.
Colin, I had fun with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
LinkedIn is the best place. You can search for me, Colin D Ellis, on LinkedIn. You can find out more about the work that I do at www.culturefix.xyz. You can also find me on Facebook, Colin D Ellis, Instagram, Colin D Ellis as well.
Colin D Ellis, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump.
Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.